In this paper, our group made into 3 parts. The first part is introduction. It talked about the background of the study. The second part is the problem of the study, about what is grammar and how to make a good grammar. And the third is what are the relationships between civilization and grammar. And the third part is conclusion. Grammar is the system of a language. Sometimes it is described as the rules of a language. If we use the word rules, we suggest that somebody created the rules first and then spoke the language. In written text, if you do not use correct grammar, or your sentences are too long and complex, what you are trying to say will become unclear, and the reader will be unable to follow the text because the meaning is interrupted. Inconsistencies of grammar and the mistakes will blur the meaning of written work. But it will be different in the spoken language.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Thank you, Miss Devi. Thank you for the opportunity that given to me. Well, in this chapter, I will explain about what is grammar, the definition of grammar according to the expert, and the application of grammatical study, and then also I will explain about how to make a good grammar based on the classical parts of speech, the degree of inflectedness of words. Okay, the first one is what is grammar? The word grammar has several meanings and there is no universally accepted definition. Different experts different the term grammar differently. Okay, as you see in the slide, the definitions of grammar according to David Crystal, British linguist, academic, and author, grammar is the study of all the contrast of meaning that is possible to make within sentence. The rules of grammar tell us how to make a good grammar. And then, in other hand, based on the Cambridge Advanced Learner Dictionary, third edition, grammar is the study or use of the rules about how words change their form and combine with other words to make a sentences. Based on these several states by the experts, grammar is the study of the classes of words in their inflection and their function and also the relations in the sentence of a language. Every language has its own grammar. It is crucial because it needs to help in understanding the language. Grammar makes possible the production of comprehension of a potentially unlimited number of utterance because no language can exist without a grammar and none can use a language fluently without knowledge of it. Okay, therefore grammar plays very important roles as a bridge between speaker and the listener in people communication in both speaking or writing. Okay, the second one is the application of grammatical study. According to Sydney Greenbaum and Gerald Nelson in their book Introduction to English Grammar, the first one is A recognition of grammatical structure is often essential for punctuation. The second one is a study of one's native grammar is helpful when one studies the grammar of a foreign language. The third one is a knowledge of grammar is help in the interpretation of literary as well as non-literary texts, since the interpretation of the passage sometimes depends crucially on grammatical analysis. The last one is a study of the grammatical resources of English is useful in composition. In particular, it can help you to evaluate the choices available to you when you come to revise an earlier written draft. Okay, next slide is about how to make a good grammar. According to James R. Hofford, in the Origin of Language book, there are two dimensions of making a good grammar, such as the first one is the fineness of classification and subclassification of words into the types, like the classical parts of speech are verb, noun, pronoun, etc. As we know, the part of speech is a part of syntax. The second one is the degree of inflectedness of word, called morphological complexity by linguists. How to construct the new words by adding the suffix and or prefix without change the word class. Okay, I think that's all for my part explanation. The next chapter will explain by Miss Siti Fatona. Miss Siti Fatona, the time is yours. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Thank you, Miss Yola, for the time. Now, I will explain about the relationship between civilization and grammar. Traditional grammar refers to the collection of respective rules and concepts about the structure of language. The origins of traditional grammar can be traced back to 15th century BC to Aristotle and Plato and Greek. However, the most prominent traditional grammarians began writing in the 18th century, when English developed as a separate language. However, it is important to note that principles of Latin grammar are the main basis of traditional English grammar. Traditional grammar defines what is and is not correct in the English language, not accounting for culture or modernizing in favor of maintaining tradition, because it is fairly rigid and rooted in the way of the past. Traditional grammar is often considered outdated and regularly criticized by experts. Even so, many children learn this proper historical form of grammar today. Traditional grammar classifies words based on 8 parts of speech: the verb, the noun, the pronoun, the adjective, the adverb, the preposition, the conjunction, and the interjection. Modern grammar. The modern grammar is the study of the theories and application of English language structural system as developed since the onset of the early modern English period. The study focuses on American English texts spoken and written, and applies traditional, structural, and modern linguistic Modern English is conventionally defined as the English language seen about 1450 or 1500. Distinctions are commonly drawn between the early modern period, probably 1450 until 1800, and late modern English 1800 to the present. The more recent stage in the evolution of the language is commonly called present-day English. However, as Diane Davis notes, linguists argue for a further stage in the language, beginning around 1945 and called World English, reflecting the globalization of English as an international lingua franca. With the invention of writing and its gradual evolution into more and more tractable forms, starting in summer only about 5,000 years ago, grammar its use could become more complex. Modern written language has more complex grammar than spoken language, but only in a quantitative sense. Almost entirely, writing uses the same construction as spoken language, but pushes their combination further and to greater depth of embedding. While spoken language rarely has one subordinate clause inside another, this is more often found in writing, and styles of writing differ in how far push the combinatory possibilities. The language that is used by philosophers who have been trained in countries where Latin is taught in school tends to be more complex. There, in case you hadn't noticed, that last sentence that you just read was an example of several subordinate clauses in one sentence. As is the present one, people in normal everyday life don't talk so complexly, using several separate sentences instead of one complex one is more the norm. In formal situations like media interviews with politicians or cultural critics, spoken language takes more of a cue from written language and people talk like a book. There are a small number of phrases and idiomatic expressions that are only found in writing, such as the your sensory at the end of a letter. Next slide. The differences between traditional grammar and modern linguistics. Definition of traditional grammar is collection of prescriptive rules and concepts about the structure of language. And the definition of modern linguistics is scientific study of language and its structure, including the study of grammar, syntax, and phonetics. Traditional grammar origins can be traced back to the 15th century, and modern linguistics derived from traditional grammar. The type of traditional grammar is prescriptive, and the type of modern linguistics is descriptive. The traditional grammar is focused on written form, and modern linguistics is focused on speech. The standards of traditional grammar force language into a Latin-based framework, and the standards of modern linguistics does not force one language into the framework of another. The last slide is the last of our presentation is conclusion. For most our existence, humans lived in small, isolated traditional communities. The very recent rise of civilization has influenced the history of languages in different directions. On the one hand, increased cooperative contact between people speaking diverse languages has tended to simplify grammar. On the other, the invention of writing has allowed for the use of more complicated grammar, at least in quantitative terms. In the very recent past, with the rise of cities, states, empires, and long-distance trade, has contact between people speaking different languages had any influence on the languages themselves. So that's the last our presentation, and that's all what I can deliver to you in this presentation. I'm Siti Patona Werunisa. Thank you for watching. Bye.
Bye.
Assalamualaikum.
Assalamualaikum.